Hi, I'm Sónia Frota from the Lisbon Baby Lab, University of Lisbon, and I'll be presenting our work on emerging segmentation abilities in atypical development, looking for the edge. Word segmentation is the ability to identify individual words from speech, and this is a challenge. This is a challenge because speech is continuous. The early word segmentation ability plays a crucial role in language acquisition, namely for word learning, and thus it is critical to study this ability in early infancy. Segmentation abilities in typical developing TD infants have been shown to vary across languages. We also know from recent studies that they are modulated by prosodic structure. Words at prosodic edges are segmented earlier than in utterance medial position. There are only a few studies, to the best of our knowledge, on segmentation abilities in atypical development. These studies indicate that the development of this ability is seriously delayed, but the learning path is similar to that found in typical developing. These are studies on English learning infants with Williams syndrome and Down syndrome. And these studies followed the familiarized with words, tested with passages paradigm. There are only 2 studies, to our knowledge, on segmentation abilities in infants at risk for language impairments, namely preterm infants. And these studies have provided mixed findings. The Spanish and Catalan learning infants failed word segmentation when we are considering CVC and CCVC words, whereas the French learning infants succeeded in the segmentation of CV words. These studies followed the familiarized with passages, tested with words paradigm. So, segmentation abilities in atypical development have only started to be examined, and most importantly, to our purposes, the role of prosody has not yet been explored. In the current study, we look at early segmentation abilities in European Portuguese EP learning infants with Down syndrome and in a mixed group of infants at risk of language impairments. And these include infants that were born preterm and infants with familial risk for autism or language disorder. Our main goal is to examine whether prosody facilitated word segmentation, as it was previously shown for typical developing infants in the Butler and Frota study. And as lexical acquisition seems to be delayed in Down syndrome and also at-risk infants, we further asked whether prosody modulated the relation between segmentation abilities and lexical knowledge. In the previous Butler and Frota study on EP learning typical developing infants, we found early segmentation for prosodic edge only. Only at prosodic edge, and this was from 4 months onward, providing the earliest evidence for segmentation, we did find the ability to segment at this position in which salient prosodic cues are found. Segmentation at utterance medial position was still developing by 10 months. So we concluded that prosody modulated the early segmentation abilities of typical developing infants. What about atypical development? If similar mechanisms and/or trajectories guide word segmentation in atypical development, we expect a similar pattern of results, but possibly delayed. 25 infants and toddlers with Down syndrome participated in our study, and 21 at-risk infants and toddlers also participated. These were infants that were born and raised in monolingual homes, they had normal hearing to mild hearing loss, normal or corrected to normal vision, and no history of seizures or other medical or neurological conditions. Our stimuli were the same as in Butler and Frota. We used 4 monosyllabic pseudo words with the CVC, CV glide word shape, and 2 passages were constructed for each word, one for medial and another set for edge prosodic conditions. So in the medial condition, we had the target word in utterance medial position and internal to the intonational phrase where the less prominent cues are found, whereas for the edge condition, we had the target word at the utterance edge final position, where the most prosodically prominent cues are found. Let's just listen to a couple of examples of the edge condition.
Os vizinhos brincam com o teu full. Estão sempre a falar-nos do full. Elas viajavam muito de full.
Okay, and we also constructed 4 word lists from different spoken exemplars for the target words.
Full, 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 full.
So here we can appreciate the difference in the prosodic cues that are found in both positions, the less prominent and the prosodically prominent position. So the main difference has to do with the final fall, so the pitch range that is found in the final fall that is due to the presence of the nuclear contour in the prosodic edge position. And together with this final fall, we also find pre-boundary lengthening in this prosodic edge position. And these 2 cues, so the durational cue and the pitch range cue, they were significant in our stimuli, and they clearly distinguished the 2 prosodic conditions. The procedure was also the same as in Butler and Frota. We familiarized infants with passages and then tested them with words. Segmentation would be demonstrated by any consistent difference in looking times to the familiar and unfamiliar word forms. I will show you an example of the procedure. This is one Down syndrome infant.
A Marta pôs o seu fundo na mesa. Fizemos festas ao fundo vermelho. Nunca comi fundo com morangos. O Todd desenhou um fundo bonito. Conheço fundo doce do Algarve. Eles disseram fundo muitas vezes.
Okay, this was a familiarization sequence.
Sim.
And now the test trials.
Sim.
This was the unfamiliar.
Full.
And now the familiar word form.
Full.
Okay. We also measured concurrent language abilities, and for that we used the European Portuguese version of the CDI short forms. The results are presented as mean looking times by prosodic condition, edge and medial, respectively shown by the colors blue and red. These for the familiar word forms, and also the mean looking time for the unfamiliar word forms here in green. And we are now just looking at the overall results for Down syndrome and at risk compared to typical developing infants. Focusing on Down syndrome, infants and toddlers. Overall, we found that the Down syndrome group is not segmenting in none of the prosodic conditions. We then asked whether age influenced their performance, and we looked at 2 age groups, younger and older, following the CDI age range. We found no effect of prosodic condition or age group. However, the difference in looking times between medial and unfamiliar was larger in the younger group, whereas the difference in looking times between edge and unfamiliar was larger in the older group. And in fact, only edge and unfamiliar in the older group approached significance. We then examined the relation between segmentation abilities and concurrent language skills. And we found that segmentation abilities were correlated with the CDI expressive vocabulary score. So we found a moderate correlation between more looks to prosodic edge and a better vocabulary score. Let's now consider the results for the at-risk infants. Unlike for the Down syndrome ones, a significant effect of prosodic condition was found. The effect is driven by prosodic edge, providing evidence for segmentation in prosodic edge position. We also asked whether age influenced performance, and we looked at the 2 age groups, younger and older. A main effect of prosodic condition was found, but there was no effect of age group or interaction, as the same pattern of results was obtained across age groups. Looking at the relation between segmentation abilities and concurrent language skills in the at-risk group, we also found a correlation, this time a strong correlation between more looks to edge and a better receptive vocabulary. Finally, we performed a cross-group analysis to answer the following questions. Is the development of segmentation abilities different in the Down syndrome and at-risk groups as suggested by the data just reported? And how do atypical groups compare with typical developing infants? In this analysis, we found a main effect of prosodic condition of group and an interaction between condition and group. We found that the difference between edge and unfamiliar was larger for TD over Down syndrome and was smaller for Down syndrome over at risk. We also found that the difference between edge and medial was larger for TD over Down syndrome and was smaller for Down syndrome over at risk. There was no difference between medial and unfamiliar across groups. So the results show that the Down syndrome group differs from the other 2 groups due to their shorter looking time to prosodic edge, due to their longer looking time to the medial prosodic condition, and due to the fact that no segmentation was found at prosodic edge. Although the at-risk and TD groups do not differ, we did find that in the at-risk group, transmedial segmentation seems to be delayed. So, summing up, DS babies, unlike at-risk babies, did not segment at the edge or medial, and younger and older babies show different looking patterns. The Down syndrome group follow a different developmental path, as only after 18 months of age do they start looking for the prosodic edge, but segmentation is not developed yet. At-risk babies, by contrast, they successfully segmented at the prosodic edge, but only segmented at the prosodic edge. And this provides the first evidence for CVC, CV glide segmentation for at-risk babies. Although following the typical developing developmental path, for at-risk babies, no evidence for the emergence of segmentation in medial position was found, thus suggesting that segmentation abilities are delayed in the at-risk group. We also found that segmentation abilities at the prosodic edge, and crucially, segmentation abilities at prosodic edge only, were correlated with concurrent vocabulary scores, and this both for Down syndrome and at-risk babies. So, a link was found between segmentation skills and language acquisition that had not yet been found for atypical development. This set of results suggests that prosody matters for word segmentation, for the development of word segmentation abilities. Early segmentation abilities are modulated by utterance level prosody, also in atypical development, with implications for language acquisition, namely word learning, and for remediation and intervention strategies to support language acquisition. Thank you so much for your attention. I will be available to answer any questions and to listen to all the comments. That would be most appreciated. You can contact me through my email address and we can arrange a Skype meeting or talk in any other form. Thank you so much again for your attention. Bye-bye.